The Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. Go to KerryLutz.com and sign up for 30 free micro trainings on financial survival.
The show is brought to you by Miles Franklin. When it comes to protecting your wealth, you know there's nothing better than gold and silver. And when I want gold and silver, I go to Miles Franklin, because they've been around 22 years, and when you buy, they ship. For more information, go to milesfranklin.com or call them at 800-822-8080 and get a free quote. 1490 WGCH, this is Kerry Lutz, and you're listening to the Financial Survival Network. Here's someone who's got the inside scoop on where the markets are heading, where they're getting rigged now. He's been writing like crazy. He's back with us, Bix Weir. Bix, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I wish I had the inside scoop.
Well, you seem to have it better than most people out there. What's going on here?
Well, there's a lot going on every front. The big thing happening right now is the European derivative market is imploding as we speak. And we all know that on March 9th, the Greek bonds were declared in default, which set off basically a firestorm in Europe. I know the media and all the financial commentators are trying to play it down, but it was gigantic, and only one bank has declared their losses so far, and that was an Austrian bank that lost $1.3 billion. There's over 4,000 contracts supposedly that still need to be cleared, and right now what I see going on is they're trying to cover up as much as they can in the European derivative market, but you're having people quit their job because of what's happening. For example, Bank of America, the head of European derivatives trading, on March 22nd quit B of A. This is huge. Bank of America is the third largest derivative holder with $55 trillion worth of derivatives. It is absolutely blowing up in Europe. And then just last night we have a story breaking that there's a rogue trader at JP Morgan who's piling up this massive derivative position. Now, if you go back in history at all the big financial problems and the big losses, the banks seem to always come out with some rogue trader who did it, some young kid who got access to the computer and raked up multi-billion-dollar losses. I think that's what JP Morgan is trying to position this rogue trader called. His name's Bruno Ixel. And supposedly the guys in Europe are saying he is controlling the multi-trillion-dollar derivative market in Europe right now.
Single-handedly, huh? Without anybody's knowledge?
Oh, yeah. It's the perfect way for these big banks to deflect the blame of what they're really doing, which is complete fraud and manipulation of these markets. But, the interesting thing is, the way they're going about settling these derivative contracts, especially on the credit default swaps of Greece, they basically listed a bunch of bonds that they declared were in default. They didn't say Greece was in default. They just listed these bonds that were in default. And the ISDA is trying to use that as, we can have little problems, but we can't have that big problem of Greece as a sovereign nation defaulting. So, they're trying to pick and choose who gets paid out and who doesn't. On May 15th, the English law bonds will be decided, and then 30 days after that, they have to pay up on the credit default swaps. Supposedly, most of these credit default swaps on the Greek bonds were written in English law, which is a lot different than what the Greek law says. And every single credit default swap contract is written differently with different parameters, and it's such a gigantic mess that they have no way to fix it.
And that's the whole problem, because it's not a unified market. There's no transparency, and these were separately negotiated contracts supposedly. And my personal feeling, Bix, is that none of them are ever going to be paid off. They're going to find reasons to pay off a little bit, so it looks like the market's semi-honest, but when push comes to shove, and everything hits the fan, it's game over. Nothing's getting paid.
You're correct. But the reality is it's not really a problem. It's a solution to the global problem that we have now. The problem right now is there's way too much debt. It is unpayable and unsustainable. So the only way to get out of the situation we're in right now is to collapse the whole system. And that's what these derivatives are doing in Europe right now. And it'll continue to pile on. You're going to hear more and more issues and problems coming out of the European derivatives. And they do literally have the power to destroy all fiat money, because the top 4 derivative players in the world are JP Morgan, Citibank, Bank of America, and Goldman Sachs. Those are the 4 biggies. Goldman has the smallest out of 4 with $46 trillion, but the next one going down is HSBC at only $4 trillion. Now, don't get me wrong, $1 trillion is a lot of money, but literally all the derivatives are concentrated in those 4 banks, and any one of those even teeters a little bit, it will set off a chain reaction around the globe. Every 401k, every savings account, every checking account, everything will implode once these derivatives go off.
Yeah, that's what Ty Andros said. He said you'll know that the whole thing is coming down because you'll go to use your ATM and it won't work.
and people don't, your average person doesn't even think about the interconnection between, if JP Morgan goes down, they're interconnected with every single other bank and every single checking account, savings account, mutual fund, local credit unions. They're all interconnected. And if that entity, if that credit goes down, they don't have money to give to you. If your bank goes down, they don't have money. This is a leverage system. The average bank is leveraged 12 to 15 to 1. So, it doesn't take much to topple the system or topple your local bank. It's a leverage system. You give them your money, they lend it out 15 different times. So, unwinding of a leverage system is going to be ugly. But that is what we need right now. That is the only way out of the problem. No nation in the history of the world has ever paid off their debt. They always default on debt. So, we're getting to that point. It's going on now. We're going to look back a year from now and say it started on March 9th when Greece went down, and then everything kind of cascaded after that.
Yeah, so the only thing you could do is hold metals then, because otherwise you're just going to fall victim to the implosion, which is happening before our very eyes, and it's just a question of how long they can draw it out, which leads to the next thing is, did you catch the interview with Blyteh Masters the other day?
I did. The Wicked Witch. Yeah. Here's what I think is going on. Blythe has been hiding basically for the past 3 years. She was the creator and the person who made the credit default swaps in Europe explode into the gigantic market it is today. She was the one at JP Morgan working out of their derivatives office in London. She created that bubble that blew the system apart. Then JP Morgan, because she's so integral to that problem, brings her over to their commodities group, and now she runs all the commodities at JP Morgan, which is the largest commodity holder and trader and derivative holder in the world. And the interview that she came out and said, "Hey, we have a balanced book. We just hedge for our customers. We don't play any games with manipulation." That is the biggest crock of what I have ever heard. But technically, she might be right. If they are running the book for the U.S. government, for example, they can say, "Oh, it's the government told us to rig the price up to $50 and then down to $25 to shake out all the weekends. It was the government that told us to, knock the price of silver down with huge COMEX paper silver trades. It was the government. So we have basically immunity from any prosecution from the CFTC, not that they're going to do anything anyway, or the SEC or the FBI. All this is coming to a head, and I think it's very significant that at this point in time, Blyteh Masters decides to come on TV and say, "Oh, no, we're not rigging the silver market." I think something's coming down in the next couple months where JP Morgan will be busted for doing just that, rigging the silver market.
Yeah, what I saw from that is she got very defensive when she was asked about those metals positions, and then she gave the party line, but the reporter didn't ask, well, is your client the U.S. government? That's what I wanted to hear her ask, but it was a set-up interview. She had the questions in advance, and this was just a puff piece saying, don't worry, sheeple, everything's going to be fine. We're running things honestly, not a care in the world. Don't worry about your savings. Don't worry about your bank accounts. Everything's being taken care of for you. And what are those people going to think when this thing blows up, Bix?
Well, I'm going to blame her. A lot of people will blame her. A lot of people blamed her for the credit default swap implosion. But it's not just her, obviously. It's the whole group, the banking cabal that tries to keep this thing together. But one of the interesting things she says is, because we're such a large player and because we hold inventories for, we have 3 warehouses around the world. We're the largest inventory holder. Well, that's all well and good. But if you look at the OCC reports, it says that JP Morgan, as of the end of the third quarter last year, had $19 billion worth of silver derivatives on their books. And now that's a point in time. They had $19 billion in silver derivatives. That equates to 600 million ounces of silver, theoretically. Now, the largest holding of physical silver in the world, known holding, is the iShares SLV fund, the ETF, and they hold 310 million ounces. Right in the heart of my gut, it feels like she's saying that JP Morgan is using that physical silver in the SLV fund that they are the custodian of, and they're playing hedge games with it because that's the largest amount of physical there is in the world. They're not allowed to hedge that silver. That silver belongs to the shareholders of SLV. And if JP Morgan thinks just because they are the custodian of that metal, they can go in and sell and buy and do puts and calls and rig the market up and down because they are the custodian, I think that's flat out fraud. They are not the legal owners of that silver. They have no right to be playing games with it, saying, hey, we've got this physical silver, so it's okay to have $19 billion worth of silver derivatives because we've got this, in the warehouse. That's not their silver. They're just the custodian.
And the other thing is the short position that was taking place in those ETFs, which effectively, when they borrow the shares and sell them, that means there's actually more shares outstanding than are authorized, and yet those new shares that have been created out of thin air, naked, shorted, whatever, are unbacked shares. So that's another big issue there that they're part and parcel responsible for, all the banks.
That is flat out fraud. It was wrong. Luckily, Ted Butler went after BlackRock, who's the trustee, and said, "Hey, this is fraud. You better fix it." And he sent letters to the CFTC. And now, if you look at over the past 3 or 4 months, that short position has come down drastically. And I think BlackRock got the message that, hey, silver investors and silver commentators and people who are in the silver market are sick and tired of the games. And we're going to stand up yelling and screaming to whoever listens or whoever doesn't listen, because we know there's massive fraud and massive manipulation in silver, and we're going to keep screaming until it ends.
Yeah, and there's only so far they can push it till it's going to collapse of its own weight, along with everything else, all the other derivatives, all the other financial alchemy that has been built up and taken place over the last 2 decades. It's all a big scam. Merlin doesn't exist. You can't create gold from lead or gold from computer bits. Can't be done. Bix, hey, it's been great talking to you. I know you're really busy. You're writing up a storm. For people who want to learn more about the Road to Ruta and what you're talking about, where do they find you?
You can go to roadtoruta.com and sign up for free updates, or if you get a little more into it, you can sign up to be a paid subscriber, and there's plenty to talk about these days.
Oh, no shortage there. Hey, we'll check in with you next month because this is a developing story that you really need to be aware of. You need to know how it's going to affect you, your savings, just your day-to-day life, and people don't get it, do they?
Not yet, but I'm afraid that everybody's going to learn a very, very difficult lesson very soon.
We'll be there with you, Bix. Be well.
You too.